Welcome to the third JustRPG.com podcast. I'm James, and today it's going to be a little different compared to our podcasts in the past. Due to a scheduling conflict, Jim was unable to join me this week, so I will be doing it by myself. Because of this, I'm going to be a bit more brief than we usually are, and I will be skipping the discussion of the week this time. If you're interested, the discussion of the week would have been what were the most revolutionary RPGs of all time. If you'd like, you can go to the website and check out that article there. It will also be posted in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. Since we are skipping the discussion this week, I will start off with news, and this week I will be talking about the Nintendo 3DS Direct that happened a few days ago. Then I will finish up by talking about the game of the week, which this week was Rogue Galaxy for the PlayStation 2. If you'd like to follow along with the podcast, you can go to the video description below. If you are listening on SoundCloud or some other format, you can go to JustRPG.com, then hit the tab that says podcast at the top. There'll be a post labeled podcast number 3. You can click that, and that will have links to the topics that I'm going to talk about. If you haven't been to our site before, please check it out. We have hundreds of reviews for RPGs, and we do news articles throughout the week. You can also follow us on Twitter at JustRPG. We keep up to date with games we've been collecting, pickups we get in the store, and articles that we post on the website. Alright, so let's get into it. Again, first we're going to start off with the Nintendo 3DS Direct. This was a pretty meaty Direct. Nintendo showed off a lot of new games here. They also gave updates for a lot of their existing games. So we'll go in the order which it appeared in the Direct. First, they previewed a little bit more of Pokemon Sun and Moon. These games have gotten some press releases in the past couple months. And this Direct wasn't too enlightening, but there were some pretty cool things in there. Like they've shown in the other podcasts, they have Alolan forms of existing Pokemon like Vulpix and Exeggutor, which kind of change, and sometimes they change their typing. And they've also mentioned Z-moves in the past, which they also mentioned in this. As far as Alolan forms go, they showed off the new Rattata form. They gave a pretty detailed description about how it became this form, but basically it's a dark Rattata. I thought it was pretty neat that they actually gave reasons for their new form. They kind of stated that this mongoose Pokemon was coming in, so the rats had to hide, and then they changed. And apparently that mimics what actually happened to Hawaii. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Then they showed off a pre-order bonus for Pokemon Sun and Moon, which will take the form of a Munchlax. This Munchlax will be holding an exclusive Z item, which will unlock the move Pulverizing Pancake for Snorlax. If you haven't seen this yet, it's pretty neat. Snorlax's eyes glow bright red, and then he comes down. So it's pretty cool. Well, that's about it. That's all they really showed for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Then they showed something I'm pretty interested in, which is Super Mario Maker for 3DS. I have the Wii U version, and it's a blast. I'm not even into creating stages. I just like to play, but there's a ton of stuff to play. This does seem like a Mario Maker Lite, as in there's like less stuff to do in this one compared to the Wii U version. For one, those costumes that you can use in the Wii U version, like the Twilight Princess costume and stuff like that, those are most likely not going to be included in the game. Other than that, there'll be some courses that you can only play on the Wii U version. You won't be able to play on the 3DS. Also, in this one, instead of uploading them online, there will no longer be these long codes. Now you're going to trade locally. So this kind of looks like the local multiplayer version of Super Mario Maker. Another piece of information that they put out is if you create most of the stage but you don't finish it, you can then send it to your friend locally, and then that player can finish it, and then both your names will appear on the stage. This is kind of neat if you're into creating, but personally I'm not that into that. So, if I can find some friends who get this game, then I probably will. Otherwise, I might just hold off and we'll see. The next game they showed was Mario Party Star Rush. If you don't know by now, Mario Party has not been great for quite a while. Pretty much since N64, maybe GameCube. Basically, what they've been doing with Mario Party games is taking out the skill in the mini games and the board game mode itself, and making it more random. Mario Party Star Rush is supposed to return to that skill kind of style of play. This means that they've probably been listening to reviews and people, which is always good, and hopefully this one's much better than the past ones. They actually directly said that this game will be pure skill, no dice. So, I mean, that has me pretty hopeful. I don't know if the franchise has already done too much damage to itself to really continue, but we'll see. Next, they showed off some new features for Animal Crossing New Leaf. I thought this was pretty interesting because the game's been out for a couple of years now, and it is a good game, but it's kind of weird they're putting updates to it now. The updates are going to take the form of amiibo compatibility. Now, that's not something I'm too excited about, but it's good that they're supporting these games. It seems that they've kind of taken Animal Crossing recently and combined it with amiibo, with that Wii U game that's kind of like Mario Party, that's all about amiibos, and I don't know how I feel about that, but again, Animal Crossing, good game. I don't know if I'll get into these amiibos, but the more support Animal Crossing gets, the more likely we are to see a new one, so, can't be bad. The next topic that they mentioned in the 3DS Direct was an update to the Mii Plaza. This was a surprise to me. I don't think they'd ever do something about this, but they're adding more games to the Mii Plaza. They're also kind of streamlining the experience and making it kind of easier to go through. And if you haven't done it, this is usually a chore. You can only get 10 people at a time to come through your Mii Plaza. They're going to be increasing that. They're also going to make it quicker to kind of go through all those new tags that you get. Then they're adding new mini games. They're adding a game called Slot Cars, Market Crashers, Feed Me, Mii Trek, and Ninja Launcher. These are going to be pay-for games, but they're going to give you either Slot Car or Market Crash. You get to choose for free. The other ones you have to pay for. I can't really get too excited about this. I'm sure there's some people into the Street Pass and the Mii Plaza, but really not one of them. But again, it's always good to add more stuff. The next game looked pretty cool. It's called Tank Troopers for 3DS. This kind of looks like an arcadey tank battle kind of game. Looks like you'll have different crew members in a tank. They will have different abilities. They show off a couple like paintballs, freeze, electric shock, and they said there's going to be more. It's going to have single player, local multiplayer, and download play. So only one of your friends have to get this game, or for you guys to try it. I'm pretty hopeful for this. It looks cool. I've played games like War Thunder, stuff like that, and I enjoyed the tank battles. If this is an arcadey Nintendo version of that, sure, I'm down. I'm eager to see more about that. We'll see what happens. The next topic they mentioned was Picross 3D Round 2. Picross is a puzzle game. This one is going to be eShop only. It'll be basically an updated version of Picross 3D. It's basically going to make it a little more strategically complex. They're going to add multiple colors to it, which you can pop out and do stuff in the puzzle mode. They're also adding a demo, which should be up on the eShop by now. So if you're into puzzle games, Picross is a pretty good one and should be worth checking out. Alright, the next topic they talked about was actually something covered in a news article recently. It's the Nindy Summer Jam. Basically what they're doing is they're adding a bunch of new indie games to the eShop for Wii U and 3DS. One game which launched I think the other day was Axiom Verge. This is kind of like a Metroidvania kind of game. It looks pretty good. I saw a Let's Play of it. It looks pretty fun. There are a lot more, but if you're more interested in that, you can definitely check out our article, which I'll be linking in the podcast section. Alright, the next section that they talked about was kind of Zelda focused, with the new hype with Breath of the Wild and all that. They started this off by showing the NES Classic, which is basically a mini NES console that's going to be preloaded with 30 NES games, one of them being The Legend of Zelda. And then it's going to have a controller that's basically an NES controller that has the same fitting as a Wii Classic controller that would plug into the nunchuck. This is going directly into the system. This is pretty neat. I mean, I'm a collector, so I have NES games already, so I'm not that interested in it, but if this NES controller either is sold separately or I can use this to play games on either the Wii or the Wii U eShop with it, it's pretty neat. The next thing they mentioned there was they're going to be adding new amiibo based on the Zelda franchise. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of amiibo, but I'm sure some people are, and people love Zelda, so it makes sense they're going to be adding that. Then they talked about a new book, an art book that they're putting out called Zelda Art and Artifacts. It's basically going to have a bunch of Zelda pictures, stuff like that. I looked it up. I don't think it was more than $30. But if you're a Zelda fan, then I'm sure you already know about it. But it's pretty neat. Then finally, with Zelda, they mentioned that Skyward Sword will be available for download in the eShop. So if you haven't played that, it's a good way to get it. Alright, next topic was they mentioned Nintendo Selects. This is another topic that I covered in a full article on the website in the news section if you're interested. But basically every once in a while, over the last couple of years, Nintendo's been labeling certain games as a Nintendo Select, which means they sell for $20 brand new. It has kind of a greatest hits cover art to it. They added more titles to that. You can get Wind Waker on that. They added Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for 3DS on that. But again, if you're more interested, you could definitely check out the full article on our website. The next topic they mentioned was a new color for the 3DS XL. The new 3DS XL, my bad. It's the Galaxy color. It's kind of purple, has some stars and some galaxy image on it. And then the inside's kind of a darker blue. It looks cool. Am I going to go out and get a new 3DS just because it's a new color? I don't think so. I already have a new Nintendo 3DS, so pretty happy with the one I have. The next topic was another Zelda topic, actually. They are doing another update for Hyrule Warriors Legends for 3DS. I have not played this one on 3DS. I have it on Wii U, and it's awesome. I'm already a fan of Dynasty Warriors, so adding Zelda to that was awesome. But this new update will add new character, which is going to be Zelda from the DS Zelda games. She'll be called Toon Zelda, and basically she's kind of like a ghost, and she'll be possessing armor and fighting in that. It looks pretty cool. They're also having a new weapon for Toon Link. It's going to take the form of the Sand Wand, which looks pretty cool. So if you're a fan of this game, there's definitely some more stuff to play. It looks like they're giving this game a lot of love, so should add some more longevity to it. The next game, they didn't really talk about too much, but Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice will be on the eShop only. I don't think it's getting a new physical release, but if you're a fan of the series, then definitely check that out. The next game they mentioned was the one I was actually waiting for, and I was kind of disappointed because they didn't talk about it too much, but that was Dragon Quest VIII. It's probably my favorite Dragon Quest game. I've loved it on PS2. It's beautiful. But they're porting it to 3DS, and basically they didn't say anything about it except they're confirming that it's coming out. And then they kind of use it as a segue to talk about Dragon Quest VII, which is coming out next month. This is one I haven't played. It was on PS1, and it's super expensive on PS1. So it's kind of a good way to do it. But this is going to be basically an upgrade version of that. It's also going to have Street Pass functionality, which is always a plus. It's supposed to have hours of new content as well. It doesn't look amazing. It's kind of limited to those 3DS graphics. I'm sure you've seen them like Bravely Default, stuff like that. But I'm probably going to pick this one up. I like Dragon Quest. I haven't played this one. They said it's going to have hours and hours of content. They said it's going to have multiple endings. They said it's going to have replay value. Apparently Street Pass is going to unlock new dungeons, so it looks pretty good. The next games they mentioned were Yokai Watch 2, Bony and Fleshy Souls. This looks pretty interesting. I have Yokai Watch 1, but I actually haven't even taken it out of the wrapper. Still sitting on my shelf. Been meaning to play that. But this time They're going to do the Pokemon method, and they're going to put out 2 games. One's going to be Bony Souls, and one is going to be Fleshy Souls. They're going to have different yokai in each one. They're going to have different abilities, so you can kind of get both versions and collect all the stuff that way. The next game that they mentioned was Disney Magical World 2. This is something I definitely am not excited about, but if you're a Disney fan, it's definitely something worth looking into. It kind of looks like a action RPG, which is going to kind of have like a beat 'em up style combat. Again, not something I'm interested in, but it looks playable if you're into Disney. The next game they mentioned was Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. I am not a big Sonic fan after the last couple games that have come out, but this one looks a little better. The one on Wii U was horrendous, but this one looks more like that 2D platformer. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't have high hopes, but we'll see. The next game that they talked about was Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. This is going to be a new game. It's going to expand on Shin Megami Tensei 4. It's basically going to be a sequel. This version promises more content. The first run versions of the games are going to include medal sets, which are physical medals. So that's a nice piece of swag. It's always nice when they do that. I'm actually pretty excited about this because I liked Shin Megami Tensei 4 in 3DS. I thought it was great, so I'm glad they're putting more on the system. The next game they mentioned was Yoshi's Woolly World for 3DS. This looks like more or less a port of the Wii U version, which is pretty impressive, but it's basically going to have all the levels from the Wii U version and then more. They're also releasing it with a Poochie amiibo made of yarn, which was pretty neat. Again, I'm not into amiibos, but looks pretty neat. You're also going to be able to use Poochie as eggs like you would normally do. So that should, open up some more gameplay mechanics. Or they're also going to have Poochie stages, where they'll let you play as Poochie. I think it looks pretty good. I did not pick up the Wii U version yet, but it looks visually awesome. If they can manage to put that look onto 3DS, then I'm definitely going to be interested. They're also releasing this game with some shorts, animated shorts, which are in the style of the game, which look pretty good. Alright, the next game was Ever Oasis. This one I'm also very interested about. It looks like a action RPG where you're going to have an oasis, which is going to be your town, and then you go out in the world, you get upgrades for that, and that is going to kind of make your town better and then progress the story more. The art on this looks pretty good. The combat looks pretty neat. There's going to be puzzle solving and you're going to fight boss and stuff like that. So overall, this game looks very promising. I was not aware of this game before this, so I don't know if it's the first time they've shown it, but looks pretty neat. The next game they showed, which surprisingly I'm also interested in, is Mario Sports Superstars. This is basically going to combine all of the Mario Sports into one game. They said it's going to have soccer, baseball, tennis, golf, and horse racing. This sounds kind of weird, but Nintendo's promising that all these games will be the full versions of those titles. It's also going to be multiplayer, which will be online, which it better be for these types of games. It's also going to have local multiplayer. I'll wait to see more trailers to see what I really think about this, but so far it looks pretty good. The next game that they showed was something most people are not too happy about. I'm a little more optimistic, but there's already a petition online to get it canceled, and that's Pikmin for 3DS. They haven't given a full name yet, they're just saying Pikmin. This one's going to be side-scrolling, which is completely different compared to the other Pikmin. It'll be very touchscreen reliant. There'll be a bunch of puzzles we use the Pikmin to solve. To me, this is kind of a red flag. We saw them do this with Chibi Robo in the form of Chibi Robo Ziplash, which was okay, but it wasn't great. It wasn't really true to the Chibi Robo series. So that's kind of a red flag there. Also, the touchscreen heavy gameplay is usually a red flag. So I don't know if Nintendo's going to be able to pull this off. But again, there's already a petition online to get this canceled. So I don't know how this is going to go. We'll have to wait to see. All right, well, that about sums up the Direct. All right, now we've been moving on to the Game of the Week, which this week was Rogue Galaxy for the PlayStation 2. This is a action RPG that was released in 2007, kind of at the end of the PS2's lifetime. This is a game that I had not really heard about or played before, but I picked it up because of the airship and the planet on the cover, so it kind of gave me that Skies of Arcadia feel to it. I also heard great things after seeing it. I looked it up and it looked pretty good. So let's start out by talking about story in the game. Story is probably the least appealing part of this game. It's pretty generic. Kind of all the characters follow those generic anime tropes. It's not bad, but it's nothing impressive. The voice acting is amazing. The voice acting is really good. It's not quite Dragon Quest VIII on PS2 quality, but it's pretty close. The dialogue in the game kind of goes with the story. I noticed that it kind of contradicts itself. Like, the one character will say, "Oh, we can't do this because of this," and then they'll talk about how they're doing that as you're walking around. So that inconsistency was a little disappointing. But it's not bad, the story, but it's definitely not amazing. One interesting part about this game, which I thought was very impressive, was there's no load times in the game. Once you start the game, there'll be one loading bar, and then that's it. There's no more loading bars in the entire game. That's pretty impressive for PS2. I'm surprised they're able to do that. On top of that, it's all cel shaded and it looks beautiful. Game looks awesome. Looks really cool. Other than that, the game's kind of weird. In combat, you'll have basically like an action bar, and you can perform like different attacks, stuff like that. And as you attack, that depletes. And then when that's depleted, you have to guard for a few seconds, and then that bar will fill up pretty quickly. Or if you block, the bar will fill up instantly. So I guess the game is trying to encourage you to not just button mash and also to block and do some other stuff like that. But I found it kind of weird to get used to. Also, let's say you attack a few times, your bar's at half, then you block, your action bar's at half, and then you block, it doesn't restore. It only starts to restore when you empty it and then try to fill it up again. So a little weird there. Combat is also very difficult. Like, if you any monster around the map can wipe your party. I thought that was pretty challenging at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's kind of doable. There are a few parts in the game where the difficulty kind of spikes, and you're kind of stuck there, and you have to either grind or you're done. It's kind of unforgiving in that respect. Skills are also a little weird. You, instead of having like a skill that you use, it's like, let's say it's a melee skill. Instead of just using it in combat, you pause, you select the skill, and then it will go to like a little cutscene, and then you actually perform the skill. So you have some time to kind of plan out your moves, but it also kind of breaks up the combat and gameplay. It doesn't flow too well because of that. That being said, the combat is fun. It is satisfying when you do get the hang of it. You start beating up monsters and you're doing well and you're blocking attacks and stuff like that. So combat's not horrible. It's just not like typical. There's also special weapons in the game. Like, there's one weapon called the monography shot, which you get in the first hour of the game. And what this does is it shoots platforms on top of the enemies. So some enemies, like, let's say it's a big turtle, you can only attack like the top of its shell. You're gonna have to shoot these platforms onto it, jump on the platforms, get to the top, and then attack that part of the shell. So it's not hard to do, but sometimes they don't tell you which one you have to use. For example, there's another one that's the freeze shot, which will freeze an enemy. Again, they don't tell you exactly when you just kind of have to figure it out. So the game definitely doesn't hold your hand at all. Also, you can jump in the game, and in combat, sometimes there's enemies. Like, for example, there are these plant enemies. And when you jump on them, they kind of bud their flower, and then that's the weak point, and you can attack it. So, it's not bad, it's not amazing, it's kind of somewhere in between. But the graphics, the load times, and kind of the size of the world, which is huge, by the way, is pretty appealing. I don't know if I mentioned before, story-wise, but you're basically a pirate, kind of very, again, Skies of Arcadia-esque. You're a group of pirates, and you have this airship that goes into space, and you're going to different planets, and that's going to be like, let's say, the Forest Temple equivalent is going to be a planet. You can go there. At the beginning, the game is very linear. Like, they only let you use... Like, you'll have a large array of characters, but you can't choose them early on. They'll kind of choose for you, and then you're kind of stuck with those characters. But later, when you get through a few hours of the game, or more than a few hours, probably like 10, that kind of opens up, and you can kind of change your party members. You can kind of go where you want, and it kind of becomes more open world. So, pretty interesting in that regard. Probably the weirdest part of this, which is kind of Final Fantasy X-esque, but basically to learn new skills, you have this big chart, and each slot on the chart will have multiple items that you insert or use them, and then they disappear. And then when you put all of those in, you learn that skill, and then it's kind of spreads out in a grid. So basically, like a new melee skill, you have to insert these different items into the grid, and then you'll get that skill. These items are usually kind of rare items, so the game definitely encourages you to explore around and find those items so that you can get the new skills. I do like how the system works. The only part I don't like is that I always feel like if I don't get that drop or I don't find that chest, I'm just never going to be able to get that skill. And that's kind of a little weird. I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know if you're going to... A lot of the items you can buy in shops, I don't know if every item's going to do that. I don't know if I have to go back, spend 2 hours to find this one item that I missed just because I didn't go through that one hallway. That part kind of scares me a little bit, but I haven't finished the game, so I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But it is pretty unique. So overall, Rogue Galaxy was pretty fun. A little weird to get used to, but once you do, the game is pretty good. I definitely recommend that if you are a RPG fan and a PS2 fan, that you definitely check out Rogue Galaxy. It's definitely worth your time. Alright, well that about wraps it up for today. Come visit us next week, where the game of the week will be Final Fantasy X for the PlayStation 2. Please check out www.JustRPG.com for game reviews, news articles, editorials, and much more. You can follow us on Twitter at JustRPG for updates. And you can message us if you have a topic for the next week's podcast. Also, make sure to follow us on social media sites such as Pinterest, Tumblr, and again, Twitter. The links will be in the description below. Alright, about sums it up for today. Good night.